we're going to tackle a question that's at the absolute core of every new company. How in the world do you put a price on pure potential? Yeah, we're demystifying startup valuation.
Okay, let's just dive right in. It all starts with this, right? The fundamental question that every single founder and investor has to face. Usually when all they have is a great idea, maybe a slide deck, and a super dedicated but small team.
And this quote from Jason Mendelsohn, man, it just nails it. This is the real challenge. At this stage, you're not valuing what a company is today. Nope. You're trying to put a number on what it could be 5, 10 years from now. You're literally pricing hope. So let's get one thing straight right off the bat. The biggest myth about valuation is that you're looking for a single mathematically perfect number. That's not the goal. The real goal is to start a conversation. You see, that final number, it isn't some magic calculation. It's what comes out of a negotiation. It's a tool that forces everybody, the founders, the investors, to get on the same page about the company's future, its potential, and, just as importantly, all the risks that come with it. All right, so to really get this, you've got to understand why valuing a startup is a completely different ballgame from valuing, say, a company like Coca-Cola. Think about it like this. On one side, you've got your big, mature companies. They're valued on stuff you can touch and measure, right? Predictable revenue, hard assets, years of historical data. But startups, they live in a world of massive uncertainty. Their value is all tied up in things you can't put on a balance sheet. The brainpower of the team, the IP, and of course, that huge future potential. And that is exactly why the old school methods just completely fall apart here. Book value, that's just assets minus liabilities. It totally ignores the brilliant idea, the brand, the team. Cost to duplicate, you can't just rebuild a community or a network effect from scratch. It's a whole different animal. So, if the old playbook is out, what do you do? Well, in the very beginning, when you have zero metrics, valuation becomes much more of an art than a science. In these super early stages, founders and investors kind of blend a few things together to land on a starting number. They look at comps. What did similar startups raise? They look at the soft stuff, like how amazing the team is. And a lot of the time, they just work backward from how much cash they need to survive. And you'd be surprised how much this one little rule of thumb anchors the whole discussion. Seriously. If a founder knows they need, say, $1 million to hit their next big milestone, and investors typically want around 25% for that kind of risk, well, you can do the math and work backward to a valuation from right there. But okay, things change. As the startup gets a little bigger, maybe it has some customers, some early revenue, that's when the investors start to bring more science into it. And their favorite tool, by far, is the venture capital method, the VC method. Now, the logic here, it's kind of backward, but it's brilliant. Instead of starting from today and guessing about the future, the VC method starts at the very end. It asks, okay, in a best-case scenario, what could this company sell for down the road? And then, what's the most we can pay for it today to make the profit we need? The whole thing really boils down to this one formula. You're taking that massive future number, the terminal value, and you're discounting it, you're shrinking it back to what it's worth today. And that key variable, that required ROI, that's just a fancy way of pricing in the enormous risk that this whole thing might go to zero. So this is basically the playbook. It's a 6-step process that investors follow. They figure out the cash needed, project way out into the future, guess at an exit, and then they work it all backward to land on a number they can bring to the negotiating table. Let's make this real. Imagine a startup needs $8 million. The investor thinks, in 5 years, this could sell for $100 million. But because it's risky, they need a 30% return each year. So they run the formula, and that future $100 million is only worth about $27 million today. That's the post-money, the value after the cash is in. So to get the pre-money, you just subtract the $8 million investment, and you land at a $19 million pre-money valuation. And hey, if you thought that 30% return was steep, get ready for this. For a company that's just an idea on paper, the required annual return can be a mind-blowing 94%. Why so high? It's simple, really. Investors know that for every home run they hit, they've got to pay for the other 94 companies in their portfolio that are gonna fail. All that risk gets priced right in. But, and this is a huge but, chasing the highest possible valuation isn't always the smart play. In fact, getting too high a price too early can be downright dangerous.
You don't have to take my word for it. This is from the founder of Ship. They were a super promising startup, raised over $60 million, were all over the news, and then they crashed and burned. He said it himself. The valuation they took set expectations that were just impossible to meet. See, a high valuation is like setting the high jump bar way up in the stratosphere. It creates insane pressure. And if you don't grow into that valuation, if you can't clear that bar, your next fundraise might be at a lower price, a downground. And that is brutal for morale and a terrible signal to the world. To avoid this whole trap, a lot of the earliest companies use these clever financial tools that let them get the money they need now, but basically kick the can down the road on setting an exact price. Things like safes or convertible notes let the actual valuation get decided later when the company has real data to back it up. So when you boil it all down, what you realize is that startup valuation is this really cool mix. It's the art of telling a great story and negotiating, blended with the cold, hard science of financial models like the VC method. And really, at its absolute best, the whole process isn't about the number. It's about using the negotiation to build a shared vision for the future, a vision that's fair to both the founder's dream and the investor's risk. And that's our explainer for today. We'll leave you with this to chew on. If valuation really is just a story about the future, what's the difference between a good story and a believable one? What's the proof that turns all that hope into an actual bankable investment?